The red and blue lights reflected off the midnight blue Lexus like a warning. Judge Jennifer Herald pressed her foot lightly on the brake, heart steady but mind racing. She hadn't been speeding. She hadn't run a single stoplight. Yet here she was, being pulled over in the quiet suburbs of Houston, just 2 miles from her home. Stolen vehicle report, license and registration. The officer barked. Now, what's the report number? Jennifer's calm voice cut through the tension. Officer, why was I stopped? I just told you. Stolen vehicle report. Hand over your documents. Her fingers rested lightly on the steering wheel. Her briefcase sat on the passenger seat, filled with classified documents that could set national security protocols in motion. 5 cameras mounted on nearby patrol vehicles captured every motion, every word. The officer didn't know it yet, but he was facing more than a federal judge. He was facing the law itself, armed with evidence he could not erase. Jennifer handed over her documents, maintaining her composed posture. I'm asking a simple legal question, she said. Her tone was calm, unwavering, one that had commanded courtrooms and silenced seasoned attorneys. The officer's eyes flicked nervously to his backup. He had no idea that the briefcase beside him contained sensitive information tied to a federal investigation that would unravel a 15-year criminal enterprise. By the time backup arrived, Jennifer's composure had not wavered. She sat in the driver's seat like a statue, unafraid, every gesture measured. Her mind was running through the evening's schedule, groceries, dinner, a quiet night at home. Instead, she now faced a fabricated stop that would soon make national headlines, a detainment that could threaten the very law she served. If you appreciate stories that reveal courage in the face of injustice, hit the like button now. It helps keep these stories coming. And as the officer reached for the door handle, Jennifer's eyes locked with his. In that moment, everything about this stop would change, and the officer would soon realize one small mistake could cost millions in careers. The patrol officer paused. The air thickened. Then Jennifer spoke, her voice cutting sharper than any gavel. Am I being detained? The answer that came next would set off a chain reaction no one in that quiet Texas suburb could have anticipated. 2 minutes had passed, yet the air in the Lexus felt heavier than ever. Judge Jennifer Herald remained seated, hands resting lightly on her lap, the briefcase still in plain sight. Every second of this encounter will be captured by the 5 cameras mounted on patrol vehicles, evidence that the officer could not undo. She reflected on her morning, her mind briefly escaping the tension. She had spent hours reviewing a counterterrorism case, analyzing intelligence reports, and preparing motions that would prevent threats to national security. Each classified document in that briefcase carried weight, a responsibility that stretched far beyond the confines of her courtroom. Her calm composure was a contrast to the officer pacing outside. Sheriff Samuel Hemsworth's patrol had pulled her over based on a stolen vehicle, alert that seemed suspiciously convenient. Jennifer's intuition told her this was not a mistake. Someone had triggered this stop. But she did not panic. She never had. Her career had been built on navigating high-pressure situations with clarity and control. Are you refusing to cooperate? The officer asked, voice tight, hands twitching toward his radio. Jennifer's reply was steady, deliberate. I am asking for the legal justification for my detention. The patrol officer hesitated. A single wrong answer, a single misstep, could turn this stop into a federal nightmare. That detail, the law itself, was already in Jennifer's favor, though the officers did not realize it. Backup arrived, and the tension escalated. Sergeant Vincent Drake, a veteran of 24 years, stepped out of his cruiser. He had seen dangerous criminals, internal corruption, and national scandals. But nothing in his career had prepared him for a federal judge sitting calmly in the driver's seat, a briefcase of classified documents in plain view, staring him down with unwavering authority. Jennifer's lips pressed into a thin line. Her eyes scanned the officer's every movement. One wrong touch, one unauthorized access to her belongings, and the consequences would be immediate, undeniable. Suddenly, a phone buzzed in one of the patrol cars. The camera above the dashboard caught it all. In that instant, The sergeant realized a chilling truth. Every document in that briefcase had already been automatically backed up to secure cloud storage, making any attempt at tampering a federal violation. The officers froze. Jennifer's comm had turned their routine stop into a ticking legal time bomb. And then came the question that would make Hemsworth's career unravel. "Do you have authorization to access federal property?" Jennifer asked, her voice cutting through the hum of sirens. Silence. The answer, or lack of one, would decide everything. The patrol car's flashing lights reflected off the Lexus, casting Jennifer's calm face in alternating red and blue. Sergeant Vincent Drake finally spoke, though his voice betrayed uncertainty. "Judge Herald, we need to process you," he stammered, glancing nervously at Hemsworth. Jennifer tilted her head slightly, maintaining the composure that had carried her through countless courtrooms and high-stakes federal investigations. "Process me for what?" she asked, voice precise, controlled. "I'm a federal judge. You have no authority over these documents, no legal justification for detaining me. Explain the law you are relying on." Hemsworth shifted uncomfortably, realizing this wasn't going to be a routine traffic stop. Every camera captured the tension. The cameras she had counted on were silently documenting the unfolding legal nightmare for the officers. The sergeant's radio crackled. He repeated something about a stolen vehicle report, but the words fell flat. Jennifer's mind raced, not with fear, but with the cold logic that had helped her dismantle criminal networks. She knew that one single detail, her judicial immunity, would completely invalidate this stop. But if the officers ignored it, the consequences would be catastrophic. Drake swallowed hard. "Judge, you need to step out of the vehicle. Please cooperate." Jennifer opened her briefcase slightly, allowing a glimpse of the documents inside. Each folder stamped with federal classification symbols. Every photograph time-stamped and backed up in real time. "I will cooperate," she said, "but only within the law. Touch these documents without authorization, and you're committing multiple federal offenses. I suggest you step back and think carefully about your next action." A beat of silence stretched long enough to make the officers sweat. Hemsworth's hand hovered near the door. A single poor decision here could end his career, and perhaps more. Then, as if on cue, a deputy's phone buzzed. Automatic cloud upload notifications from the briefcase documents appeared on the officer's screen. The room froze. Every piece of classified material had already been secured beyond reach, time-stamped and irrefutable. Jennifer's voice cut through the tension, calm but with undeniable authority. "Are you aware that any unauthorized access to federal property carries mandatory minimum sentences?" Hemsworth's jaw tightened. The weight of the law, the cameras, and Jennifer's presence collided, creating a moment of silence that felt endless. And then the shocking realization hit the room. Their actions were no longer just a traffic violation. They were a federal crime in progress. By the time Jennifer was escorted to the holding area, the tension had shifted from disbelief to outright panic among the officers. Concrete walls, harsh fluorescent lights, and the faint smell of disinfectant replaced the calm of her Lexus. Sergeant Drake tried to maintain composure, but his hands trembled as he unlocked the holding cell. Jennifer stepped in, folding her suit jacket neatly on the bench. Her posture remained impeccable, straight-backed, commanding, and unwavering. She glanced at Hemsworth, who avoided her eyes. The reality was settling in. They had underestimated the woman they thought was just a driver. "Currently in holding, pending processing," Drake said, his voice sounding more like a plea than a statement. "Judge, what charges are?" Jennifer's lips curved slightly, almost imperceptibly. She had faced interrogation rooms before, but never under such absurd circumstances. "What charges have been filed?" she asked calmly. Each word landed with judicial weight. The sergeant read from the screen. "Obstruction of justice, suspected involvement in vehicle theft operation." The room went still. Even the hum of fluorescent lights felt intrusive. Jennifer didn't flinch. Instead, she allowed a brief pause, letting the absurdity and gravity sink in. Then her voice, low but piercing, cut through the silence. Federal credentials have been presented and ignored. You are now in violation of federal law. I am requesting that no further processing occur until federal agents arrive. Drake's eyes widened. He had dealt with internal investigations, officer misconduct, and high-profile incidents, but this was beyond anything he had faced. Every procedure they had followed now carried the potential for criminal liability. Jennifer didn't raise her voice. She didn't argue. She simply asked, methodically, one question at a time. Were the briefcase documents photographed? Were any marked classified? Were these images uploaded to secure storage? Each answer confirmed what she already knew. Every single document had been automatically backed up to encrypted cloud servers. Time-stamped. Untouchable. The evidence was irrefutable. Hemsworth's face paled. The weight of their miscalculation pressed down on him. One wrong step, one aggressive move, and their careers and freedom would vanish under federal scrutiny. Jennifer's calm gaze swept the room. You now understand the magnitude of your actions, don't you? The silence that followed was absolute. Within minutes, the distant wail of sirens announced the arrival of federal agents. Jennifer's expression never changed, composed, deliberate, in full control. The holding area doors rattled as 3 black SUVs rolled up, lights flashing, the air thick with authority. Captain Drake barely had time to stammer greetings before a team of federal law enforcement officers moved in. They carried badges, credentials, and an air of unshakable confidence. Hemsworth and his deputies were suddenly out of their depth. What had started as a routine traffic stop had become a federal crisis. "Step aside," an agent ordered. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Every word carried weight. This individual is under federal protection. No further questioning. No interference. Jennifer stood, her posture perfect. She handed over her briefcase, each movement calm, precise. The federal team quickly verified the documents, classified materials, national security sensitive, and time-stamped in encrypted cloud backups. Every single page had been accounted for. Hemsworth swallowed hard. Sweat gleamed on his forehead. Every action he'd taken, every aggressive demand, every violation of procedure was now on record. The federal agents immediately began logging violations, noting every misstep. The sheriff's department had just handed a lifetime of evidence to federal prosecutors. Jennifer's voice broke the tension, measured and authoritative. "Captain Drake, are you aware that unauthorized access to classified documents carries mandatory minimum penalties? That obstruction of federal proceedings is a felony." Drake's knees nearly buckled. Hemsworth avoided her gaze entirely. He had been trained to command, to intimidate, but now, under the quiet authority of a federal judge, he was powerless. Jennifer straightened her jacket, and for the record, she added, almost gently, "All files were automatically backed up before your phones were secured. Every photograph, every timestamp, indisputable evidence." The agents moved her to a secure vehicle. Hemsworth and his deputies were left in the holding area, watching as the woman they had thought they could intimidate calmly walked into the kind of justice they could never command. In those tense moments, it became clear this was no longer a routine traffic stop. Careers and lives were about to be destroyed. By the next morning, the sheriff's department was in chaos. Word of the detainment gone wrong had spread through internal channels and social media. Every officer who had been present during the stop felt a knot of dread forming in their stomachs. Emails, texts, and frantic phone calls flew between deputies and supervisors, none offering solutions, only questions and panic. Captain Drake sat in his office, staring at the evidence log. His hands trembled slightly as he scrolled through the automatic cloud backup timestamps. Every single file, every single photograph of the briefcase's classified contents had been uploaded before the phones were even secured. He had no leverage, no way to explain away the violations. Every procedural misstep had been captured, stored, and time-stamped. Sheriff Hemsworth paced back and forth, phone pressed to his ear. He was already fielding calls from the county attorney, federal prosecutors, and journalists. The tension in the room was palpable. Every word Hemsworth spoke sounded smaller, weaker, more desperate. He had thought he could handle the situation, intimidate the woman, control the narrative, but Jennifer Herald had already rewritten it all. Meanwhile, Jennifer had returned to her chambers, quietly reviewing the recorded footage from her dash cams and the courthouse security cameras. Every action the deputies had taken, every aggressive movement, every questionable decision had been documented. She didn't need to raise her voice. She didn't need to threaten anyone. Evidence, procedure, and patience were all she needed. Back at the sheriff's office, deputies whispered among themselves. Some had doubts. Some feared being implicated. Hemsworth's authority, once unassailable in the county, now teetered on the brink. Every decision he had made during the traffic stop would be scrutinized, analyzed, and ultimately used against him. Jennifer's calm presence was a stark contrast to the storm she had unleashed. She had not only protected herself, but she had also begun to expose a pattern of reckless enforcement, a system that allowed unchecked power to flourish. By afternoon, federal oversight agents had arrived, beginning preliminary interviews and reviewing the chain of events. The clock was ticking, and for Hemsworth and his deputies, it was counting down to career-ending consequences. The morning light barely touched the county when the first federal subpoenas arrived. Officers in the sheriff's department were handed envelopes that carried words they hadn't imagined seeing in their careers: mandatory appearance, civil rights investigation, evidence review. Panic spread like wildfire. Captain Drake had spent the night sleepless, replaying every moment of the traffic stop, every misstep, every decision. He knew the evidence was damning. The automatic cloud backups had preserved every photograph, every timestamp, every file, immutable proof of federal violations. Nothing could be erased. No excuses could cover the breach. Sheriff Hemsworth tried to maintain composure, but the cracks were showing. Deputies whispered as he passed, uncertain whether to follow orders or distance themselves from a rapidly crumbling authority. Hemsworth's reputation, once the anchor of the county, was unraveling before their eyes. Meanwhile, Jennifer Herald prepared her filing. Every transcript, every dashcam video, every photograph was organized meticulously. She drafted her complaint with precision, targeting not just the unlawful detainment, but the systemic failures that had allowed it. The document outlined patterns of discriminatory stops, misuse of authority, and reckless disregard for federal law. When the first internal meeting convened, tensions hit a new high. Investigators questioned Hemsworth and his deputies one by one. The questions sharp, relentless, impossible to deflect. Hemsworth stumbled over his words. Explanations faltered under scrutiny. Each officer's response, once confident, now shaky, was documented, preserved, and prepared for federal review. Outside the courthouse, journalists had begun to notice. Whispers of the story spread through local news channels and social media feeds. The image of a federal judge handcuffed in a routine traffic stop was explosive, captivating national attention. The story of a single woman taking on entrenched authority resonated across the country, igniting debates about police accountability and oversight. Jennifer remained calm. Every detail she had gathered, the dashcam footage, the backup photographs, the timeline of events, was weaponized with precision. One detail, overlooked by Hemsworth and his hubris, had changed everything. The automatic cloud backup ensured that nothing the deputies had done could be hidden or deleted. That single oversight was the key that would unravel the entire department. The courtroom was packed. Cameras from every major network lined the walls, their lenses fixed on the figures at the center of a case that had captured the nation's attention. Sheriff Hemsworth, once untouchable in his county, now sat at the defendant's table, his uniform replaced with a plain suit, hands folded nervously. The room buzzed with anticipation, but all eyes were on Judge Jennifer Herald. She walked in with the same composure she had shown the day of the traffic stop. Every step echoed authority. Every glance communicated control. No one questioned her presence. She was the embodiment of justice, the anchor holding a storm of corruption at bay. The evidence was laid bare. Dashcam footage, Timestamps, photographs automatically backed up to the cloud, witness testimonies, and patterns of discriminatory stops. Each piece demonstrated not just a single act of overreach, but a systemic failure that had persisted for over a decade. Hemsworth's hubris, compounded by procedural ignorance, had triggered this unraveling. When the verdict was read, the weight of the words hit like thunder. $35 million in total damages, $10 million compensatory, $25 million punitive, awarded to ensure the department and its leaders would face consequences for systemic misconduct. It was the largest civil rights settlement in Texas history. Justice, measured in millions of dollars in federal oversight, had been delivered. The federal consent decree that followed reshaped the department. Mandatory body cameras, independent oversight with subpoena power, quarterly reporting of all stops by demographics, and comprehensive bias training developed by civil rights experts. Officers who had once been unaccountable now faced transparency. Patterns of discrimination could no longer hide in shadows. 3 weeks later, Judge Herald held a press conference. Her voice carried calm authority, tempered with subtle emotion. Every dollar of the settlement would go to organizations preventing future abuses. The National Police Accountability Project, NAACP Legal Defense Fund, the Innocence Project, and local legal aid groups. None was kept for personal gain. Every action was focused on systemic reform. Sheriff Hemsworth, stripped of authority, began serving his prison sentence. Jennifer returned to the bench, continuing her work with the same unwavering composure, proving that justice could survive abuse, emerge stronger, and deliver long-term consequences. The final scene lingered in the minds of the public. A woman, handcuffed yet unbroken, whose careful planning and calm resolve had turned injustice into transformative accountability. Justice had not only been served, it had been reinforced, with $35 million ensuring it would continue for decades. And as her statement concluded, she left a call to action subtle but clear. Stay aware. Demand accountability. Justice matters.